Hello, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're logging in from. Welcome into the ID5 hot air balloon. As you can see, we're flying over London right now. We're going to wait a few minutes for people to join in. If you have access to a chat box. In the meantime, don't hesitate to drop in the name of the city or the country where you're joining from. It'd be great to have an idea of representation in here. I see a lot of familiar names in that list, which is great. Hola from Chicago. Oh, good morning, Chicago. North Holland, okay. Hello, Mark. I know some of you are from Paris. I recognize the names in here. New York, okay. So a lot of morning attendees. Great, great to have you guys on board. Give it a few more minutes to make sure we've got everybody. Holmfirth, probably butchered that name. And I'm sure Google knows where you are. Okay, it's 3:03 here in London, so we can get started. So again, welcome everybody to the ID5 hot air balloon. We think it's a very appropriate place to welcome you all as we are trying to take the industry forward into a journey to a more sustainable and also probably more silent world for digital advertising to be powered by cookieless identification, like the ID5 Universal ID. So I am going to take you through an overview of what we believe is the state of digital identity in this critical year 2021, as we're preparing for a cookieless and a MAIDS-less future. Yeah, again, the chat is open. Feel free to ask questions. I'll try to address them along the way, and we will have probably 5 minutes at the end of the session for Q&As. So don't hesitate to interact. So again, hello everybody. My name is Mathieu Roche. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ID5. And ID5 is an identity company. Our mission is really to rebuild the identity infrastructure that digital advertising is working with or based on, with 3 key principles in mind. The first one is that identification is a privacy topic, right? We cannot identify users. You cannot create user IDs without having, in some regions of the world, consent. In others regions, at least some form of agreement. And so privacy by design, privacy first, are principles that we put very high in our list of topics to cover. The second belief is that publishers need identification mechanism. They need to be able to identify customers if they want to value their inventory at the right price, and if they want to continue to power and to offer free services and content to users paid for by advertising. So it's really important that we work with publishers and we work for publishers to enable them to continue to sell advertising, and in doing so also give an alternative to brands on where to invest their marketing dollars, and specifically on an alternative against the walled gardens, right? We know that Google and Facebook don't need cookies to be able to identify customers. Everybody else needs a form of identification, and if we don't have cookies anymore, we need to have something else. And so that's really the goal of ID5. Our mission is really to build this identity infrastructure that powers publishers' advertising business model in a privacy-first manner. It's obviously a topic that has been very much discussed over the past few months and potentially years. And so we've instead of just sharing our ideas and our vision, we thought we were going to survey the industry. And so we run an analysis that led to the presentation I'm going to do today around the state of digital identity. We asked our kind of base of contacts, and we went through social media to recruit respondents to a survey in a few months ago in late 2020. And we compared the result of that survey with the result of a similar survey with similar questions that we did a year ago, and really tried to understand like how people's motivations, understanding of the topic, how their approach to user identification has changed over time. It's important to remember that user identification is really core to three key principles that make advertising valuable. The first one being audience profiling and targeting, obviously. That's the one that we're all talking about, right? How do we target audiences and how do we understand customers without a cookie? What else can we use for that? But it's only one of three really strong use cases. The second is campaign optimization. Anybody who's worked with FMCG brands know that reach and frequency are the alpha and omega of their advertising strategy. Be able to reach, but also to frequency cap the delivery of a message to touch, to address people a certain number of times is really core to a lot of brands' ability and interest in investing in digital advertising. And that is something that requires identification, as is performance measurement and attribution. Because without user identification, you cannot link a marketing action with a result, and that is really something that is important for a lot of brands. Probably maybe even more than audience targeting, right? It's the ability to measure the performance of their marketing message, and the understanding that those use cases are important has really increased. In our recent survey, the average in terms of grade, right, from 1 to 5 is 4.56, which is obviously a very high level of recognition that identifying users is a priority, whoever you are, whether you're a publisher, a brand, an agency. It's really important across the board, because without identification, audience profiling and targeting, frequency capping, measurement and attribution are not possible, which means that from a publisher standpoint, the value of identification, the value of advertising that they get is much lower, right? This is referring to a study by Google in 2019, but this is also something that is echoed by our research. Most publishers that we've surveyed have experienced CPM drops when third-party cookies are not available, of more than 30%, about half of them, or between 10 and 30%. And so that's a significant impact on publisher revenue that is today tied to cookies, but that is at risk of being broadened across all of their inventory if identification is not available anymore. Inventory is just less valuable if brands cannot target it, because what brands tell us is they cannot retarget their users, they cannot reconcile data from different sources, they cannot access third-party data, and that's why they are not able to invest as much. That's why they are not able to pay a premium for the ability to reach their audiences, to engage with their audiences on a one-to-one basis. And that's where Google and Facebook have a massive advantage. They are able to identify a big part of the world on a user level basis, and that is what's driving their dominance in the space, and that's why they're capturing most of the growth of digital advertising spend. This is something that all respondents recognize. The ability to identify users is seen as a huge advantage for the walled gardens, right? 35%, 75% of respondents agree with that statement. 83% of publishers strongly agree with that statement. So publishers really feel the importance or the disadvantage that they have versus Google and Facebook amongst other walled gardens when it comes to identifying users. And not only do they realize this, but they realize that it's a big threat, right? The vast majority, 72% of publishers, consider that the walled gardens and their dominance is a big threat. And obviously, recent announcements around, actions from Apple, actions from Google around identification are not helping this. This is a statement that is also shared by other Adtech platforms. 57% of all Adtech platforms surveyed by ID5 last year recognize that the dominance of walled gardens is a big threat, even though they probably work with them in one way or another. It is a big threat to the future of publishers and technology platforms. I mentioned recent announcement by the walled gardens. You would all be aware of the kind of the crossroad that we're at right now, with one part of the world saying user IDs are a thing of the past and we need to work with aggregated information. Obviously, those who say that are the ones that have user ID and kind of individual identification capabilities for themselves. But that's one way that the industry is kind of looking to go down to kind of address addressability challenges and targeting and frequency capping and attribution challenges. And the other route, which we believe is a much better one, is the route of replacing cookies by shared user IDs in the form of first-party kind of universal identifiers. If we look at cohort solution really quickly, obviously the one that comes to mind is the privacy sandbox, but it's a very similar approach when we think about SKAd network, for instance, from Apple. The position that those kind of players have taken is to say we need to process data locally in the browser on the device and share kind of grouped or kind of segmented information with the outside world, presumably to prevent privacy issues and abuse of user level data. Whether this motivation is real or not, it raises a lot of concerns. It raises performance concerns, right? Whether as an industry we will be able to be as efficient using groups rather than individual user data. It raises a question around differentiation. How can you be better than your competitor when you're a brand or when you're a publisher if you just work with whatever Google gives you access to, which is groups of users that they have defined and they have decided to put together? There's obviously questions of dependencies, right? We're already as an industry very dependent from Google and Apple, who are controlling a big part of access to users. And so giving them even more power around the intelligence to organize those users into groups is another question. And there are even kind of very strong privacy and transparency issues, because the pillars of privacy regulation, whether it's the GDPR, CCPA, LGPD, et cetera, are all the same. It's control to users and transparency around data processing. And both Privacy Sandbox or SKAd Network are everything but transparent, right? It's a black box, and it's voluntarily hidden from external scrutiny. And it basically removes control for users because it's not personal data anymore, and so you can't say if you agree, if you don't have transparency over usage. So it's very difficult to see how this approach will be privacy compliant when it comes to reaching the standards of the GDPR and similar regulations. Back to the topic of efficiency, differentiation, most respondents strongly agree that cohorts and kind of privacy sandbox-like initiatives can offer some level of addressability for digital advertising, but will definitely not cover everything. And this is a concern as publishers and brands are looking at addressability options for the future. They need something that enables them to continue to run addressable advertising, privacy compliant, right? Consented addressable advertising, but still addressable advertising. And the privacy sandbox and equivalent initiatives are not going to cut it. Obviously, ID5 believes that shared identifiers are a much better way forward in the sense that they can both solve for user level addressability, but also solve for a lot of the protection that we need to build in. Privacy compliance, privacy by designs, encryption are all kind of methods and principles that can help us build a much better, much more efficient infrastructure that still enables addressability at a user level, right? For people who are allowed to do it, but by centralizing identification, that enables us to be much more in control than we have been historically with third-party cookies, both from a privacy but also from a data protection standpoint. And the method to create those shared IDs exists, and they are already kind of deployed. There are a number of initiatives that are looking at email addresses as being the key kind of anchor for user IDs in the future. There are also methods based on algorithm and probabilistic matching that can be deployed. And it's really important that we have this broad kind of approach to user identification. Only a very small portion of publishers have enough logged in users to power their entire business, right? In our survey of publishers, 12% have more than 60% of their traffic that is logged in. 12% of them, right? Everyone else is under 60%, and most of them even under 10%. 44% of the publishers have less than 10% of their traffic that's logged in, according to our survey. Hopefully this is going to grow as publishers re-engage with their customers and build different user experiences for them and create, the ability to have that engagement and that relationship with their customers. But we'll never get to 100%. We'll never even get to 50% probably. We'll remain in the low double digits of percentage of traffic that is authenticated or logged in and that has an email address. And so that's why we need to have a more open-minded approach when we look at identification as a challenge, because we need to solve for accuracy, we need to solve for recognition and kind of precision of recognition, which email addresses are an easy way to solve for. But we also need to solve for scale. Very few brands will be interested by a solution that enables them to reach 10% or less of their traffic. So having this combining accuracy and scale is really, really important. And that's why we need deterministic and probabilistic matching to work together, to work hand in hand, so that we can minimize the number of anonymous users that will be less valuable for publishers and less valuable for brands. And the industry has really caught up with those topics. When we surveyed the market in 2019, we saw that the vast majority of respondents, between 30 and 40%, were either starting to consider or going to consider in the next 6 months shared identity initiatives, alternative ID initiatives, right? About 15% of them were not ready to consider them, and only 10 to 12% had already started talking to alternative ID providers. That's the orange bar that you see on this chart, right? Most of the biggest part of the population was starting to engage, right? Starting to evaluate or preparing to evaluate. Fast forward 1 year, most of the market, 85% plus of the market, is either evaluating or already engaged with alternative identification solution. Which is really great to see because it shows that there is a strong recognition of the importance of that topic, and it's not just theoretical. It is something that has been kind of taken on as a project, taken on as an initiative, as an action item for buyers, sellers, technology vendors, and kind of serving them to really prepare for this cookieless future. And adoption is the key signal that we are waiting for as an industry, because the value of an ID solution is directly related to its usage. It's like a currency, right? If you're the only one ready to buy or sell with a given currency, it has very little value. The minute there is a scalable, kind of a large part of the industry that is using one or more of those ID solutions, then they become valuable. Then they can be used to trade, they can be used to test, they can be used to really understand how to scale those operations in a cookieless world. And this is what we're seeing this year. And those results are from a few months ago. And I'm sure that if we were to do another survey now, we would be even further down the left side of that chart, with more and more vendors, more and more publishers, more and more technology platforms having already integrated and working with one of more of the universal ID initiatives. And people are really looking for the same things, right? It's incremental revenue. Today, we still have cookies. And so obviously that identification challenge on Chrome is not really a problem. But we want to use universal identifiers to be able to extend that reach and be able to reach users that are using Firefox, Safari, Edge, right? And so really incremental reach leads to incremental revenue from a publisher standpoint, leads to incremental addressability from a brand standpoint. So this is really the number one goal that identity solutions have to get to. Footprint, ubiquitous footprint and adoption, right? Ubiquitous availability, scalability. We've seen those numbers really go up massively at ID5 over the past 6 months. Right now, you know, in markets like in Western Europe, whether Germany or Nordics or France or UK, even in the US, you know, the availability of alternative identifiers is well into the double digits, between 15 and 30, 40, 50% in some markets like Sweden, I think, right now. So there is a lot of alternative IDs that are available now. We are running several tests with publishers and brands that have proven that alternative IDs are more broadly adopted and more broadly available than cookies. So you can reach more users with an ID5 ID than you can with a cookie. And so we've really gone up that adoption curve. And we are really able now to kind of start that transition. Neutrality is also a very important element here. As you can imagine, we're talking about currency. It's very difficult for a currency to be owned by any player in that trade. And the neutrality element, the neutrality angle is really important. And client requests, which connects back to demand, which connects back to the necessity for people to lean in and to kind of vote with their adoption, vote with their investments to really decide which ID solution will be adopted in the future. So those are some of the metrics and the charts that you can find in the State of Digital Identity report that you can download from the ID5 website. In a nutshell, the conclusions that I wanted to share with you. It is a top priority for the industry to prepare for a cookieless future. We have, 6 to 12 months ahead of us, maybe, depending on Google's decision and when cookies will be fully deprecated from Chrome. In the app world, we know that IDFAs in iOS devices are already restricted. We know that Google Ad IDs are probably going to be limited as well in their availability in the coming months. So the time is now, and the industry has made it its top priority to prepare for a cookieless future and embrace next generation identification solutions. It is critical from a monetization standpoint. It is critical for brands as well. This is like digital advertising doesn't work as well without user IDs, and it's really important that we all recognize that and we work towards the adoption of those alternative identification solutions. Authentication isn't going to be good enough. Only a small portion of publishers have enough authenticated users that they can rely solely on those authenticated users to power addressability in the future. So we need something else. We need a broader approach to identifying users and using machine learning algorithm in addition to kind of hard signals like email addresses is really a necessity. because in the end, it's about replacing an infrastructure with something that works better, that is more aligned with our privacy requirements, but that also works better from an efficiency standpoint. That works better because it enables broader audiences to be reached and engaged with and measured by brands, and it enables better monetization for publishers. So this is really what the industry is looking for, and shared IDs, solutions like the ID5 Universal ID and a few others are really the preferred method for most publishers and brands to replace cookies and maids in the future, as proven by the adoption of those solutions that is clearly on the rise, and that is kind of progressively getting adopted to power alternative addressability in digital advertising. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this rapid summary of the research has been of interest. Again, this is something that you can download from the ID5 website, so id5.io, and happy to open up to any questions. I see that the Q&A or the chat section have remained quiet during the presentation. We can leave it open for another maybe a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, it's been a pleasure to share those learnings with you. We are going to run this survey for on an ongoing basis, hopefully every year, maybe sooner. But if you have any questions in the meantime, or any topic that you'd like to discuss, feel free to reach out. You can find us on any social media that you want to engage with, whether it's LinkedIn or Twitter, id5.io. Looking forward to hearing from you all, and wishing you a great rest of your day in the ID5 hot air balloon. We're going to land in a few minutes in London, and then you can take another mode of transportation provided by the Global Adtech Media event to take you to your next panel. Thank you for your attention, and see you around. Bye.